and they'll give you all the details about this important upcoming long-scale project. On the topic of the Santa Clara County Public Health Office and the health orders, they implemented the state's regional stay-at-home order. It was put into effect Sunday, December 6th, and will remain in effect through at least January 4th, with the potential for longer temporary restrictions based on hospitalizations and ICU capacity. The county updated their guidelines on December 12th, and the state updated their guidelines yesterday. We're still having conversations with our attorney on some of the details about what can be open and under what circumstances. And I want to be careful to avoid spreading any misinformation while I'm still getting our attorney's interpretation on some of the guidelines. And what I mean by that is there are times where between the county and the state, they don't make everything crystal clear, and it does require a little legal interpretation. And so I hope to have some more clarification on that soon, which I can send to you. And while this list that I've got tonight is not comprehensive of every recreational activity and exactly what you can do under every circumstance, I can provide you with some details that I'll share now. Some of this has already been shared via email, but I want to reiterate that our playgrounds are currently open. This includes the Magical Bridge Playground. The state had reversed its decision on closing outdoor playgrounds, and we reopened them all after that brief closure on Thursday, December 10th. The visitation at Magical Bridge has been about 175 people a day, approximately. It's been varying. Other things allowed via this state order is physical conditioning, practice, skill building, and training that can be conducted outdoors with 6 feet physical distancing and within stable cohorts of authorized regardless of their county tier status. State has a helpful list of which recreational activities are allowed by current county tier and open during which the state says the following are open. So I'm not going to go through them all. I'll just highlight a few. One is the outdoor low contact sports, and they include things like biking, bocce, golf, lawn bowling, physical training like yoga, Zumba, Tai Chi, pickleball, singles only, not double pickleball. That's not allowed. Running, swimming, diving, tennis, track and field, walking, and hiking. So those are all activities allowed currently. And I just want to also briefly highlight the state's guidance on face coverings. I know this is often confusing for folks. I'm just going to read this verbatim. Bear with me. This pertains to youth and adult sports, and it pertains to participants, coaches, and support staff. Participants in youth and adult sports should wear face coverings when participating in the activity, even with heavy exertion as tolerated, both indoors and outdoors, unless the face covering would be a hazard. And face coverings must be worn when not participating in the activity, i.e. on the side, or e.g. on the sidelines of activities. Observers must wear face coverings indoor and comply with the California Department of Public Health guidance on face coverings. And I should also note spectators are not permitted at adult sports. Granted, there are many, many more health order related issues that I think would be best if you could send me your questions. I could run them by our attorney and get specific answers. Things like, is basketball allowed if you're playing just by yourself and shooting, or maybe with a member of your household? Right now, if you look at the state order, that isn't very clear. So I'm going to look into things like that, send you more information once I have it. And Chair, that concludes the department report.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have any questions about the department report this evening?
I have one. Darren, for Magical Bridge, you mentioned 175 per day. Is that lumped or is it spread out? Do we have any problems with overcrowding?
No, lately we have not. Prior to that recent shutdown, the most we had was a couple backups midday approximately, and they were about 15-minute waits tops for about 15 people. So very minimal waiting for the most part. And that was just on the weekend that we had the backups. None of that on weekdays. The colder weather and a little bit of drizzle has dropped the numbers. And so far we haven't had any waits since we reopened.
Okay. And if they let us keep it open, do we have to change the number of people, the maximum capacity right now, or keep it the same?
No, That stays the same at 55.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Chair,
Yes,
Chair,
Sam.
could I just commend Darren and the staff for all of these pivots from opening the playground to closing the playground to opening the playground to putting the tape up and down and all of that. I mean, it's totally understandable and unexpected, but you guys are doing an amazing job. So I just wanted to say that right now.
Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. And keeping a positive spin on things as we jump from hoop to hoop.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So Darren, if we want to get the complete list of guidelines from the state, is it on a website or anything? Could you
Yep.
send us that?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Moss. That should be coming from Catherine very soon.
Okay, because we walk the track at Coverly every morning and there's, I don't know, a quarter of the people who don't wear masks as they're walking around the track. And when you just said that even with heavy activity, you should be wearing a mask, that's counter to what I see. And I noticed also that besides a phone number, if you have an issue, you can send an online message to, I guess, Community Services Police or some police community liaison
Hmm.
to complain, I guess. Is that what I heard?
You know, I apologize. I hadn't seen the online version. We've been directing people to call the non-emergency number for police dispatch, and they send out either a community service officer or a police officer to talk to the person and investigate it.
All right. Yeah, I think this just came out 2 days ago.
I will certainly look into it, but I know for a fact that the non-emergency police dispatch number is what we've been using since the beginning, and certainly will still work.
Yeah. And one other thing, and that is the Tide Gate project. January, February, PIO would arrive, but we're not talking about starting construction until approximately when? Was it fall? Was it October, September, after nesting?
You know, I apologize. I'll have to double check.
Can't remember.
I'll tell you what, I'll for sure have that in my January update, or I can email you sooner if you like.
I'm pretty sure it's November or October or November of next
Yeah,
year.
something like that. I don't want people to think that we're going to start this project in March.
Right, that's
right.
correct.
Okay.
And touching further on what David suggested, it seems like we need a robust communication campaign to get the word out that really people should be wearing masks all the time now. And I'm sure that the city coronavirus update, which have been coming out on a regular basis and have been very extensive, we'll be emphasizing that. I'm wondering if there's any additional signage that could be put in place in a reasonably quick manner and without too much burden that could be effective.
The answer is yes, we can do that, both at the track and other locations as well.
Yeah, at the pickleball annual meeting, they had a long discussion about mask wearing and how to approach people who, everybody must wear a mask, but some people wear a mask over their mouth and not their nose. And some people are, worried because they go 100% exertion and it's dangerous to their health if they wear a mask. And so all kinds of discussion.
Thanks. I think we're getting a little in the weeds here and should probably move on. Anyone else? Thank you, Darren. We'll now move on to the first business item, but before doing so, I'll mention that anyone from the public who would like to speak on the Ramos Park PIO, the Park Improvement Ordinance, which will be the second business item we'll cover after the approving the minutes. Now would be a good time to raise your hand via Zoom if you'd like an opportunity to speak. We will be getting, we'll get a staff report first, and then the public will have an opportunity. So you have some time to raise your hand now as well, but just as your first cue. And so let's move on now to item number 1, approving the minutes from the November 24th Parks and Recreation meeting. Does anyone have any comments or corrections to discuss? If not, could I get a motion to approve the minutes, please?
I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Moss. And second,
Second,
Vice Chair Cribbs, thank you. And Catherine, will you go through the roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Cribbs,
yes.
Commissioner Lemaire,
Yes.
Commissioner Olson,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes,
Commissioner Repdahl.
Yes.
We have 6 with a yes on approval of the minutes.
Thank you very much. We'll now be moving on to the next order of business, which is the approval of Ramos Park, of the Ramos Park Improvement Ordinance, or PIO. This subject has come before the commission a couple times this year already in February and August, and staff has worked to adjust the plans based on commission feedback as well as community feedback based on a couple of meetings and surveys, which we'll hear about. And I'll now turn it over to staff for a report on this. And again, if any members of the public would like to speak on this item, raise your hand, please. And after the staff report, you'll have 3 minutes each to speak on this. Thank you.
And Chair, I'd like to introduce Peter Jensen, Public Works Engineering and City Landscape Architect. Also with Peter today is Peter, thanks so much. And Mega, thanks so much for being here this evening.
Great, thank you, Darren. Can everyone hear me okay? And everyone can see the presentation on the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. Peter Jensen, Landscape Architect for the City of Palo Alto. Here tonight, presenting the Park Improvement Ordinance to the Commission. Tonight we're going, staff presents the draft Park Improvement Ordinance to the Park and Recs Commission for their recommendation to Council for adoption. So your vote tonight, basically at the end of this, is a recommendation to in support of the Park Improvement Ordinance to Council, where it will go to them on the next step of this process, and they will actually be taking the vote on to approve the Park Improvement Ordinance itself. Of course, we've looked at Ramos Park a couple times already. Our main focus, of course, is the East Meadow Park frontage out there, the playgrounds, pathway connections, and planting, and of course the restroom. Here's some images we've looked at before of the existing playground. So we're looking at 2 separate capital improvement projects. One for the park itself, which is mostly looking at the playground, park amenities, ADA improvements, striping on the court, and some planting improvements as well. And then another capital improvement project for strictly the restroom itself. Both items, though, are part of the same park improvement ordinance that we're looking at tonight. Just recently, we met and discussed the plan. I will point out that on the plan, that from our discussion last time, that we have eliminated the direct path that links up to the existing walkway, and have added the hardscape walkway adjacent to the picnic area for an accessible and loop path around the park right there. That was the update from our last meeting, from comments from the commission as well as from the community itself. We basically have 7 items, park improvement items, that we're looking at that are part of the park improvement ordinance. That, of course, is to replace the existing playground And a part of that is to provide play equipment for older kids as well, 5 and up. Right now, it's just a tot lot 2 to 5. The installation of a prefabricated restroom, which we have right here. The expansion of the concrete walkway loop, which is our yellow line right here. Replace and install site furnishings. So we have benches, picnic tables, drinking fountains, things of that nature that are scattered mostly into this area here. There are a couple around here that we will be replacing. We also have discussed adding a 42-inch tall chain link fence that runs along the frontage at the East Meadow street frontage, and then doing some native planting and removing the non-use turf there, just to, of course, provide habitat and all the good things that come along with native planting, but also to reduce water use and the amount of maintenance that's needed. Number 6 is striping of the existing concrete paving in the back and putting basketball markings along that piece of concrete. And then, of course, I did mention the native planting along the frontage, and then as well as the entry that comes off Ross Road at the backside. So these are basically the items that are included in the park improvement ordinance that will be focusing on our project. I've just blown them up a little bit bigger here to make them bigger if you wanted to see them for a second. This is the verbiage that's taken directly out of the draft park improvement ordinance. This is what that park improvement ordinance is like. I'm sorry, I couldn't make it bigger to actually see, but you can start to see our 7 items right there. It also directs the council approving the plan that it is basically based upon these 7 elements at this point. With that, I will take any questions and comments from the commission about the park improvement ordinance or anything about the park renovation. I do have a slide about schedule that we can look at. I don't know if we want to look at that first, and then we can do questions and comments. Probably we should just look at this. So the park improvement ordinances tonight. We will start drawing up the bid documents. At some point in the middle of kind of as you draw up the plans, the park improvement ordinance will go to council for their approval. Once we have their approval, around that time, the plan should be done and we should be ready to bid out the project sometime in the spring. And we'd like to start the project in spring or early summer of 2021. So fairly shortly here to start the improvements of Ramos Park. So with that, I will take any questions or comments at this time.
Thank you. Before we move to comments from the public, are there any clarifying questions from commissioners?
Yes, I have one. How long will it take for the park to be finished?
I say for the park improvement work, the playground, the pathway and things of that nature, I would say it probably will take about 2 months to do. It's not a lot of work. The bathroom takes a little bit longer to do because there's utilities involved and utilities and scheduling involved. So that could take somewhere between 3 to 5 months, I would say.
So maybe you're looking at the mid-fall, and will the whole park have to be closed in order for all these improvements, or are parts of it closed?
No, we'll just close the specific areas that we're working on at the time. So the majority of the park should remain open during the renovations.
Great, because I'm sure that everybody will be really anxious to be outside playing after the COVID vaccine helps us. So thank you very much, Peter. That helps a lot.
Thank you. Any other clarifying questions? Or we'll move on to commission comments after the public has an opportunity to speak. Okay, looks like we have one speaker. And again, to the community members that have joined us, this is an opportunity to speak on the park improvement ordinance for Ramos Park. The next item is the off-leash dog pilot program for Ramos Park, and you'll have an opportunity to speak on that after this. And it looks like maybe that's what everyone wanted to speak on.
Yep.
And so there are no
Yep.
public comments. So now we can move on to commissioner questions and comments. Anyone want to raise your hand to start? Commissioner Lemaire.
Yeah, Peter, thank you so much for all you do, and you always have great ideas with our parks. One quick question I do have is, how does one enter the restroom, and from what direction, or what's the path to get to the restroom, and how is that oriented?
That's a good question. It's the restroom doors would be, I think, on the side of the playground side, so they'll be over in this location here, along this wall. So you can either walk down this
We're not
pathway
seeing
here.
we're not seeing your pointer, Peter, excuse me.
Oh, you don't see it at all? That's a bummer. I'm not sure how to, oh, maybe I can draw on here. Oh, how about now?
Yes.
There we go.
I don't know how to clear that, but so I would say that the doors will be along this side here. And then the access from the playground and the park area will be down this pathway here, of course, from the front sidewalk there. I'm gonna have to say that as we get out there and start to look at this, that we will look to see if there is a more direct path from the picnic area through the planting area to get to the door there, because there's no doubt people will walk through there to get to the bathroom. So I would say that we'll probably extend the decomposed granite. Most of this area is just decomposed granite that then gets you over to the paving in front of the restroom.
Okay, great. And the addition of the new basketball hoop, there's a current basketball hoop there, correct? Yes. Okay, so it would replace that, not add an additional one? So there'd be two, or?
No, the idea that we'd add another one, so you'd have two instead of just the one.
Okay, and then previously I had asked a question about additional court striping for things beyond basketball. Were there any ideas that were thought of or generated, or things that might be needed that could other sports could utilize?
Yeah, that was asked to the community, and nothing else came up except for basketball, which I think is the main thing that's played there. So no,
excellent. Okay, and just I guess the one comment was, I read that the restrooms cost $9,000 a year to maintain, and I'm glad that we are doing that, but we also have to realize the cost, but I think it's certainly worth it. And I'm really glad there is a restroom there, as I've used that park many times and see there's lots of practices that go on there, and young kids, and if there's not a restroom, they still find a way to make someplace in the park a restroom. So thank you very much for doing that, Peter, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Commissioner Moss?
Yeah, I just had a couple comments. So the fence, the 42-inch tall fence only goes up to the restroom. From there over to the left, there's no fence, right?
There's no fence over here, no.
Right.
Can you see my pointer on this one?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
And so people can enter from East Meadow with the native planting in the way. The only way you can get into the park is right next to the restroom. Is that right? Or is there a little opening?
No, their main entryway is right there at that point.
Okay.
Actually. But they can enter here. And that's what I'm saying, is that we're going to reconfigure the decomposed granite in the picnic area a little bit, so you can walk through here if you want to. It won't be a straight paved path. If you want the pavement, you can come there and then walk around the whole park itself.
So the 42-inch fence won't include a gate to the left of it.
No, it won't. No, that's not the way it's proposed now.
Okay.
The idea too of it is to plant this as heavy enough that you don't even see that the fence is in there.
Yeah.
It's just a secondary stop, basically.
Yeah. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Olson?
Thank you, Peter, for your work on this. When it comes to replacing the playground and actually ordering the equipment that goes there, do you take community input on some of the details there, or how does that piece work? Do you already know what's going to go there?
Yeah, we, in a previous meeting, we looked at playground equipment and the layout of it, of how it's going to be. I'm not sure if I have a.
Is that, I do recall that, is that the actual equipment that will go
Yeah,
there?
yeah, that would be the
Oh,
actual.
okay.
Yes.
Cool. Okay, good. Then I think all the questions I've asked previously have been incorporated in here, and I really like the final. So thank you. I have no other questions.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rectal.
Yeah, overall, it looks very good. The loop path, I like the idea of the loop path. How wide is that sidewalk going to be?
Currently, the path that's out there, I mean, it ranges kind of between 6 to 8 feet. I would say that we would just continue the asphalt paving around the picnic area to be the same width. The 8 feet, I think, is what it is right there where that is.
Okay, and how close is that to the picnic tables in that picnic area?
There is an open space along that edge that is basically made for people to walk. It's actually fairly wide. I think it's about 20 feet until you actually get to the tables. So it's definitely meant for people to walk through that space. Right now, it's just decomposed granite or mostly compacted dirt that's in there. So.
Okay, because I could see kids riding their bikes through there, and if it's right on top of the tables, then that wouldn't be a good situation.
Yeah, no, the tables sit back here a little bit more under kind of the trees in this arc area back here. So they will definitely have a little buffer, a good buffer actually between them.
Okay, can you refresh my memory? What does the restroom look like? What kind of finish do we have on the outside?
The restroom looks very similar to the restroom that's at the golf course. Mostly it has a cinder block is mostly what's made out of that's painted. And then it's got some wood siding on there too. I don't know if I have anything here. Let's look. Here's the playgrounds equipment. Here's the restroom, basically is what it looks like. So it's mostly has natural colors made to blend in and not stand out. Can you guys see it on the screen?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for. Yeah, I didn't want it to be too bright, and that looks like it will blend in.
Right. So it's, you know, it's our standard kind of 2 universal stalls, and then it has the maintenance shed. It will have some drinking fountain on it as well. So I think we'll get a different type and have the water filler as well, but that's where they kind of live in there.
And it says time locks during no field use hours.
I think that's just, well, that's just when they see at 10 p.m. when the park's closed.
Okay. Just like Hoover Park, it'll automatically lock.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Vice Chair Cripps. Ann?
Oh, my sound wasn't working very well. Sorry about that. So about the restroom, I'm glad we're talking about that. I'm really happy to see it going into the park. When was the last time we put a brand new restroom in a park?
I think Juana Briones was the last restroom that we built. Was there one after that, Darren? I don't recall.
I think it's the golf course.
Okay.
Oh, maybe what's it called? Stanford.
Mayfield.
Not Mayfield, but the new park where we built the soccer fields and stuff.
El Camino.
El Camino.
Yeah, El Camino.
Oh, El Camino Park.
Yeah, the golf course was after. That was
Yeah.
2015, but yeah.
Right.
Okay, so anyhow, the point is that it's really great that we're doing what the master plan suggested and putting restrooms in the park. So I'm really glad to see that. And I think it's going to be important for all of us to you know, just to monitor and make sure that the residents and the neighborhood is happy with the way that the restrooms are maintained, and there aren't issues that people worried about at some of the community meetings. I mean, we've all talked about how the new restrooms can do a lot of great things. And so I think it's going to be important to keep track of that, since it'll be great to have a good track record when we go to the next park to place a bathroom. Other than that, Peter, it's all great. And the community meetings that you held were really very, I think, very important and very well attended. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
Peter, thank you for your efforts on this, and thank you for responding to the feedback which you've heard and incorporating the ideas from both the community and the commission so effectively and comprehensively. Just a couple quick questions. The $9K annual fee for the restroom maintenance, is that the standard number that we have for other similar restrooms in parks?
I'm gonna have to let Darren answer that one.
Yes, Chair, that is comparable. Some of the larger ones a hair more, and some of the really small ones a hair less, but that's pretty close.
Thank you. And just a quick question regarding the basketball court. Both of the baskets and stanchions or poles or whatever we're calling them, they will be the same, or at least the backboard and rims will be the same?
Yes.
Okay, that's important for compatibility.
Yes.
For if you have a game going on. I'm sure Commissioner Romero will appreciate that. And so certainly you're on the right track in that we need to have a formalized trail between the path and the restroom, because people will walk the shortest distance. We know that well. And so to get ahead of the game and have something planned will certainly be helpful. And that's all the comments that I have. It looks great. It's great to see it coming to fruition, and I appreciate the effort and look forward to a new updated park for our community.
Chair, I have one more question.
Please.
And that is, if depending on how the off-leash dog pilot works, if we had to add a dog park, that would be a separate project, separate PIO, right?
Yes. Definitely.
Okay.
I also had a follow-up question. This is for Darren. So this is 550,000. Is there any thought about holding off on this? How's the city's finances, and would this money be better used elsewhere, or is this money constrained?
Thanks, Commissioner Rectal. This project is actually funded for the current year. So we've got till June 30th to use this funding, or at least to dedicate it towards this project. I suggest we move forward with this. Peter and I have talked about this many times, and we've looked at other projects. We've deferred enough, and we run the risk of deferring too much down the line where your playgrounds need to shut and you have amenities that fall into disrepair, and you can't do them even if you had an overwhelming amount of money, because there's not enough staff to implement them. So I believe it would be wise and prudent to proceed with this project as planned.
Okay. I mean, it's hard because we hope that everything's going to, with the vaccine, ramp up. But I'm just worried that in 6 months, we're going to wish we had our $550,000 back. So.
And one additional point, Commissioner Rectal, is the restroom money comes from a separate account. That's park impact fee funds, which can't be used towards regular maintenance or sustaining of existing features. That's for new park items that add to the capacity of a park. So that's where how much is it for the restroom, Peter? 300,000?
350.
So the bulk of this money is coming from an account that couldn't be used for other maintenance or other projects. The 271 that you see on your screen is the part that's dedicated to the other park infrastructure, playground, pathway, et cetera.
Okay, but we haven't put this out for bid yet, so I would assume that we should be getting pretty good bids on this. Do you expect, or do you have any experience recently of the bids coming in lower than they expected?
Defer to Peter.
I'm not aware of any other current project bids that have come in, but I would definitely expect that the inflation of the pricing that we saw before has stopped, and that we will definitely be getting more better competitive pricing for the projects now.
Okay, so that might be one reason to push forward if we think this is the lowest price that we're going to get.
I think so.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? This is an action item, and this evening we will be voting on recommending this park improvement ordinance to City Council for adoption. So if there is no further discussion, perhaps we can entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Okay, so this is a motion to approve the staff recommendation for the park improvement ordinance for Ramos Park as written in the attachment. And do we have a second?
Yep, second.
From Vice Chair Cribs, thank you. Commissioner Olson, or would you like to speak to your motion? You have anything else to say, and is there anything you would like to add? And any other commissioners would like to have any discussion before we vote? Okay, Catherine, can you please give us a roll call vote on this?
Yes, I will. Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Cribs,
Yes.
Commissioner Lemaire,
Yes.
Commissioner Olson,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes.
Commissioner Repdahl.
Yes.
We have 6 to approve the park improvement ordinance for Ramos.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Peter, for all of your work on this, and to all of staff for your support. It's great to see this moving forward. We will now move on to our next order of business, which is the Ramos Park dog off-leash area pilot program. And there will be an opportunity for members of the public to speak on this after the staff report on this. So again, if you're interested in speaking, please raise your hand via Zoom, and you'll be given 3 minutes to speak after the staff report and clarifying questions from the commission. I'll now turn it over to staff for a presentation.
And just introduce Peter Jensen again for this next discussion. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. To continue our discussion with Ramos Park, this is a discussion about the off-leash dog park pilot program. But basically want to, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on reviewing the project. I think we know the status and what we've been through. I do want to review the off-leash dog pilot goals, the scope of the pilot, of course, confirm the location. We can look at the rules, the time, and then I also want to have discussion about the makeup of the evaluation committee and the metrics of failure or success of the pilot program, as well as how it's evaluated. So there's kind of a lot of things to look at here. Basically, we just want to solidify kind of all the aspects of the pilot program itself, how it's operated, and then in the end, how we decide on if it was a success or failure of moving forward and doing it more in the future, or stopping it. So with that, I'm just going to go through the presentation. Of course, we just looked at this image. There's our existing Ramos Park. This again, funding for this, the pilot will come out of the capital improvement project as far as just signage and the poop bag dispenser goes. That's pretty much a very minimal amount that we're going to use from this to capital improvement funding to make the pilot basically happen. Of course, we did do a community outreach for the project. The most important thing that we found was that there was definitely a concern by the community of the dogs off leash in the park itself. This was not something that we had brought up. This is something that was brought up by the community to staff in the meetings. A question on an online survey was asked about having a dog park in the park, and the majority of the community does actually support having a fenced area there. However, though, we have heard some pushback from the neighbors that live adjacent to the park about having a fenced dog park area there and having it a continuous dog park, and the sound, and of course the reduced access to the park from their properties. So as a result of that, we've discussed other options, and this was one of those options, was to have a pilot program in the park itself that would allow for off-leash dog activity during very specific parts of the day. And so what we want to do by doing that, what the goals are, is to provide a clearly defined area for dogs to be off leash in the park and times that they can be off leash. We want to reduce or eliminate the off leash use of the program turf area that's right next to it, that is programmed for kids soccer and things of that nature. We want to allow the community to continue the use of the designated park area for off-leash purposes. So when it's not an off-leash area, it can be used, of course, just by the general public as a passive turf area. We want to eliminate the need and cost of fencing an area, of course. We want to maintain the access to the adjacent neighbors, which the off-leash pilot does. Create an opportunity for the community to be responsible for maintaining the rules of the off-leash area. So we recognize that dogs are off-leash in the park now, and we believe that if we give them a location and times, that they will hopefully follow the rules of having that pilot program. We want to have a minimal impact on the park itself, of course. Having a fenced dog park area would take up and would define a large area of the park over there as just a dog park use. Having the pilot does allow the flexibility of that place to be used by park users at other times during the day, which gives us multiple uses of the park, which is always good because we have limited park land. So we want to have multiple uses of our facilities. And the off-leash area will not be promoted as far as a advertising or things by the city. It's mostly, it is meant for the local community, the community adjacent around the park to use. It's not for the regional off-leash area. So the scope of the pilot would be a 9-month period. I think we could go to 12 months if it was needed and was felt by the commission and the evaluation committee that we needed more time to understand if it was working or not. But I think 9 months is how we have it set up right now. The committee, the review committee that would be evaluating how the dog park off-leash area is working would be 2 dog owners, 2 neighbors, 2 park users, the 2 park and recs commissioners, which would be the ad hoc committee, and 1 city staff liaison, which would probably be a mixture of Darren and myself, I would say. Staff is working at reaching out to these groups and identifying those that can be part of this group. I think we have 2 dog owners currently now. I am working with the staff as well as the reaching out to the neighbors to identify these other basically 4 positions for that. The committee will get together once prior to the off-leash pilot start to confirm their roles and what they're supposed to be basically doing. The committee members will be required to visit the park 6 times at different off-leash times to observe use for a minimum of 15 minutes. So that would be 3 morning times and 3 afternoon times, as that's when the proposed off-leash area is open. The committee will convene a total of 3 times during the off-leash pilot program, with a final meeting to review tally of the observation forms and to make a recommendation to the Parks and Recs Commission. So basically once every 3 months in this process, the committee will get together and they discuss how it's going and how it's working out there. There may be some recommendations to make some tweaks to time or things of that nature that could go along as well, if some of the committee feel that we need to change some things to make the pilot better. At the end of the 9-month period, the committee will report to the Parks and Rec Commission, who will eventually determine if the off-leash dog park area is not a program anymore, but just becomes an established area in the park. So that's kind of the way that we have it set up right now. Of course, all these things, we do want input from the commission on and further discussion on them. This is basically the off-leash dog park area. You can see it in blue here. It's 0.58 of an acre. So it is a fairly good sized space that's there. There will be a image or something like this on a sign that will basically define and let people know where the actual area is. There are, I believe, 5 off-leash rules. I'm not sure if you have seen these before, but no dog should be posted in the off-leash area except when in the charge, care, and custody of the control of a person of at least 13 years of age. No animals other than dogs shall be in any posted off-leash area. Off-leash dogs are only permitted in the posted off-leash area during posted hours of operation. No person shall have more than 2 dogs in a posted off-leash area at any time. Any off-leash dog in posted off-leash area must be at least 4 months of age, vaccinated for rabies, altered if over 1 year old, and currently licensed by the State Animal Services Division or other jurisdiction. All persons entering the posted off-leash area are responsible for ensuring their dog is not sick, in heat, injured, less than 4 months of age, or displaying aggressive behavior toward other dogs. If a dog is aggressive toward other dogs and humans, the dog owner must leash the dog or remove the dog from the park. And any person having charge, care, custody, or control of the dog in posted off-leash area shall do all these things that are here. And I'll let you read these things. I don't think you need me reading all these things to you. The one thing that we haven't settled on here and we would like more feedback on, I would say too that we are going to go out to the community on this and have a community meeting, so they will also be giving their feedback on all these things. But is the number of dogs in the area at one time? So I think it has been observed that up to 20 dogs have been running in the park at one time. So that's a number that we were looking at having, but we really haven't settled on a number of dogs that can run free in the space at one time. The off-leash times are 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. In the morning, and in the evening, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. or sunset, whatever comes first. So of course, this time of year, you wouldn't have much of a open off-leash area because the sun is setting earlier. And then a conversation or discussion about the metrics and how we actually judge and gauge and evaluate the success of the off-leash area. So we're basically making up a group of questions and applying some type of points to them. So if it's low or no, it's 0. And if it's high or yes, it's 10. We'll talk about how these are added up here when we look at the form. It's basically very simple. It's an evaluation form that is easy for the evaluators to use and capture information that can be used to tally at the end of the off-leash period. And then the threshold of success to continue to off-leash area is an average score of 50 points. This is the other thing we need to figure out is, how many points, or if that's the way we're doing it, do we need to score to say that it is a success? The questions and bullets that we're looking at here are the questions that are basically the evaluators will be looking at and judging or determining as they're out monitoring the dog off-leash area. And they will then be assigning these numbers to what they're observing. They will also be observing these things as well as far as noise goes. Something that we'll also be talking to the neighbors about, the noise as the pilot goes on, using the facility, number of dogs that are being used. And then if they've noticed that there are people that are driving and parking and bringing their dogs there, that's something that I think is relevant information to us as far as the use goes. And then we'll also be checking with the local agencies to see if there has been any instances or issues reported to them at Ramos Park while the pilot is going on. And then this would be the basic simple evaluation form that the evaluators would fill out each time they go to the park to observe. You can see it basically just captures the time, the date, who they are, the number of dogs they're observing, again, people driving or parking at the park. These would be then the questions that they would be looking at. Again, there's 5 questions here. We can add a couple more. This is kind of up to the commission. I would say that, this is just a proposed or draft of this, and we basically want to come to a conclusion on kind of what this is. So with that, if we can get through those things and establish ourselves, we'd like to, of course, start the pilot program to get it going. It is set separate from the renovation project and has nothing to basically do with the renovation project. We can start and have the pilot separate from the actual renovation of Ramos Park itself. So if we can do that and get it going sometime this spring, then we can observe it over the next months, and maybe a year from now, come back and decide if it is a success or not. So as you can see, there's a lot of things to talk about here. We can go through them one at a time, or if the commission just wants to go through questions and comments that they have on each particular one of these items, that's up to you guys how you want to structure the discussion. And I'll throw it back to you.
Thank you, Peter. I think it'd probably be more effective for each commissioner to speak on all of the issues or questions they'd like to raise, and do that sequentially. But first, we'll go to the public for comments. A number of hands are raised. And again, if any other members of the public would like to speak, you can raise your hand via Zoom, or if you're, and it looks like no one's dialing in, so never mind on that. And I'll turn it over to Catherine.
All right. So Peter, could you unshare right now while okay.
I'm sorry, and before we go to that, do any commissioners have any clarifying questions regarding Peter's presentation? We'll have an opportunity to speak after the public. Thanks. Catherine, please proceed.
Okay, so we have Howard Hoffman, followed by Makal Shalan, and I will be giving you 3 minutes on the clock. Sorry, I have to find where my other screen just disappeared to.
Catherine, if you'd like, I could jump in and help.
You just need to unmute Howard.
Yeah. Howard, you can unmute, and you've got 3 minutes. You can go ahead and start.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are. Please,
Great.
please proceed.
Right. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on this. As the founder of Palo Alto Dog Owners, I would just want to say that our organization strongly backs this pilot. There's obviously been a lot of thought gone into this, and the structure and the rules should really help demonstrate the effectiveness of the overall program. So we look forward to this. I normally would be anxious to get it started as soon as possible. I think with what's going on with COVID-19, I'd almost as soon prefer to start more like April rather than March till, have more people having had vaccinations and the impact that might have. Because I think a lot of people, my observation is that a lot of people have been staying away from the dog parks in general. And April, I think, would be a really good time to start. And that's basically all that I've got at this point. So thank you again for all the effort the staff and the commission has put into this.
So Darren, I can't see my screen on the speakers.
No problem. I'll move on. Thank you, Howard. And McCall Shalon, if you can unmute yourself and please proceed. You've got 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thanks again also, Peter and Darren, and all the commissioners, and all the support that we've gotten from Parks and Rec for more off-leash opportunities. I live in North Palo Alto, not in this neighborhood near Ramos, but I am strongly in support of having this pilot go forward. Unlike Howard, I'm a little more eager to start it. I think outdoor activities with social distancing are not that dangerous, but people are probably more hesitant. I don't know if at Ramos right now there are still groups meeting or not. I know that my own group has fallen off a little bit in North Palo Alto, and we don't really have a good place to meet either. So I'm really hoping to see that this goes forward, and I would have loved to even have the evaluation a little sooner, or maybe several evaluations, so that we could start in tandem another pilot program closer to the north. I think there's a lot of community hesitation around multi-field use that I wanted to address. One of the things that I've noticed is that poop is often, refuse is often left on fields, and none of that really happens when there's a group of people observing each other. Most of that, I would guess 100% of it, happens when people are walking their dogs on their own, either off leash or on, when there's no one around. But if you have a concentrated time where more people are present, it doesn't happen. Everyone's looking at everyone else's dog and notifying them, hey, your dog just pooped, it's right over there. So that's one issue that I think comes up over and over in community meetings, and it's really not correlated with number of dogs on the field at the same time. So I just wanted to address that. I think it's really important that we have more opportunities to socialize, especially coming out of this long period of relative isolation, and for the minimal cost of just having off-leash hours instead of committing a field and a fence and all of that to a dog park. I think it's a great idea to have more of those opportunities and more opportunity for neighborhood connections. So I thank you all again for your time and all the support for this project.
Thank you, McCall. John Gieslin, you can unmute yourself and you've got 3 minutes.
Thank you, commissioners. I want to say bravo to this is a great program that you're launching. And I also want to say that I agree with everything McCall has just said. I'm also in North Palo Alto, so it's several miles to Ramos Park. So I'm probably not going to be able to try this park out for myself, but I hope that the dog owners who live close by will get to take advantage of it. And I think the timing is excellent because 2 things. One of my biggest means of socialization is walking my dog and talking to other dog owners right now. So that's a huge plus in our constrained lives, at least for me. And secondly, in my small social group, there have been at least 6 adoptions during this pandemic, people taking in dogs, I think, to for comfort for themselves and their families. So the time is perfect to get this launched. The only thing I will say about the plan as it stands is that I'm a little bit disappointed that the hours at night are 5 to 7 p.m., especially during this daylight savings time when at 5 o'clock it's dark and I'm not going to let my dog go off leash. I think I might have suggested earlier that those hours might be changed during daylight savings time, maybe start an hour earlier, so there release a window when you can take your dog to an off-leash site and be able to watch your dog to make sure nothing is amiss. So I encourage you to think about that. And thank you again for getting this pilot program started.
Thank you, John. Curtis Smaller, you can unmute yourself and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Curtis Smoller. I'm not sure you can hear me, but I hope you can.
We can.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to thank you for taking this issue up. I think is incredibly important. I think that the last speaker addressed the importance of the dog parks to not only our dogs' mental health, but our own personal mental health. I think you have the fact that there are safe ways to interact outside. I'm not saying that I'm not going to opine as to what they are. I'm not a scientist, but I believe that the dog parks are a productive way to do so. And I want to thank you for doing this, and also thank you, Lydia Koo, for helping with all of this. And although I just so you know, I attempted to be one of you, but I was not so chosen. But I do appreciate, both as a father of a son who played Little League and a dog companion. Thank you for all your work. So thank you all.
Thank you, Curtis. And last speaker, Parag Patel. You can unmute yourself and you've got 3 minutes.
All right. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for taking up this proposal and for having us speak. First of all, I want to thank you for what is a very reasonable proposal. It's just very smart. It's cost effective. And, as a dog owner who takes his dog out, every day and likes to see him play with other dogs, and I like to socialize with other dog owners. I like the fact that this is limited in hours so that we don't impinge on other uses of the park, because I think the kids and soccer teams and all need it as well. So I think it's just a really well-crafted plan. So kudos on that. On the hours, I think the hours are reasonable, except in the winter. If there's a way to define it so that the hours are at least an hour before sunset or an hour and a half before sunset, then you cover the winter months. And then in terms of start time, I might have a slightly contrarian view than what was said earlier. I think the parks are lightly populated these days because of COVID. Most people are staying away, which might be a good time to try a pilot, because you won't have many people in the park and you're likely to, impinge on fewer people. So, starting this in, let's say, I'm just going to throw out a month. I'm not wedded to it, but like if you were to start this in January, for example, it's winter, but you'd have, fewer people in the park, which might make it better for the pilot to test itself out. But it's a great idea. And I think by and large, I found most dog owners to be responsible and looking after their dogs and cleaning up after them. And I think having that extra bag stand will kind of heighten people's attention to cleaning up after the dogs. But all in all, this is great. And if I would throw out the idea that if after the first 3-4 months, the pilot's going okay, it may be a good idea to try this in another park in addition. And the reason I say that is the fenced-in dog parks you have today are really great, but they're all sandy. They don't have grass on them. And in my experience, and this is one man's opinion, my dog certainly likes to run on grass much more than he does sand, and they don't get as dirty and muddy. So one option could be to put grass in the fenced-in dog parks and all the other parks, or just do something like this everywhere. Just my 2 cents on that topic. But again, thanks for doing this, and we're looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. And that is all the public speakers, Chair.
Thank you. And I want to thank all the members of the public for their input here. We appreciate hearing your comments. It's definitely nice to see more attendees than panelists at the commission meeting this evening. We appreciate the community tuning in. We're here as a conduit for you to provide your opinions and input in the process. And even if you're just listening in and not speaking, that presence is appreciated as well. Before we move to commissioner comments and questions, I'd like to start by asking Peter a clarifying question. There have been a number of comments about the hours that are specified for the evening, and I'm wondering if you can comment on that. And I'm guessing this may have to do with the use of the athletic field, of the soccer field, and trying to not overlap with that. But could you clarify what you're thinking is there, please?
I think Darren's probably better on doing that. I was not the person that set those times. I just put them in the presentation, so I'm not quite sure what the overall arching. I'm sure that the programming of the field does play definitely into that, but I'll let Darren fill more.
Thank you. Let me direct my question to staff.
Thanks very much, Darren Anderson, Community Services Department. It was interesting. We had the ad hoc and several members of a stakeholder group, McCall, Shalon, and Howard Hoffman, and John Geeson, some of our speakers tonight, helped us craft both the rules and contributed at least to the rules and these hours as well. And we debated that too. When we brought in Adam Howard, who oversees the recreation use of those fields, he commented about the potential conflicts we'd have with field users. And some of the thinking around those evening hours was to help minimize conflict with the adjacent use. The spacing between where we're proposing off-leash activity and where the sporting events would happen, mainly soccer, is pretty narrow. As you can see from the depiction on the screen, the pathway is only 8 feet wide or less. And so it's very, very narrow. And so there was some concern about dogs chasing balls and interfering with some of the athletic activity. The nice thing about a pilot is you can adjust it. And of course, this was just a starting place. So we could certainly discuss that in more detail if there's a better way to phrase the hours. I will say one thing that the ad hoc and staff and the stakeholders all agreed upon was it's really important to get a pilot right. And that is start on the best foot and make sure it's going to work for as many people as we can to build success so that we can duplicate this in other places. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Chair.
Thank you for the clarification. That's helpful. I'll now open up questions to commissioners. If someone wants to raise your hand if you'd like to speak first, please do so. Otherwise, I'll call on someone. Commissioner Rechdel. Sorry, I was looking at the Zoom hands.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, first I want one comment about the park noise. I mean, we always get this about people in dog parks and saying it's gonna be noisy. And if you compare the noise at a dog park compared to that of a playground, it's not even close. Playgrounds are so much noisier than dog parks. I think this is some fear for people who've never lived near a dog park. So I think that's one thing we have to push back on. And I've said this before, we don't have enough dog parks. Every significant park in Palo Alto should have a dog park. I mean, people don't want to drive their dog to a dog park. They want to be able to walk their dog to the dog park. So, you know, and we don't want them driving either from a community traffic standpoint. So, you know, basically, if a park is big enough to have a playground, it should be big enough to have a dog park. And so during one of our dog park meetings, there was a person who was talking about he didn't have any kids, but he has a dog, and he walks by his neighborhood parks. He sees not just one, but 2 playgrounds for kids and nothing for his dog. He feels very left out. I think that's a common feeling. I think he's totally correct. We're not providing enough dog parks for people. But that said, I'm not a fan of this proposal. I think it introduces more problems than it solves, and I think we'd be much better off just allocating the land and saying this is a full-time permanent dog park. And you don't have to have 2 hours to squeeze in the morning and 2 hours in the evening. You can come whenever it fits your schedule, because people's lives are hectic, and to have to come home by 5 o'clock so you can take your dog to the dog park just doesn't seem to be a good solution. You know, I don't have a dog, but I walk my in-laws' dog, and she's an adorable dog, but she's very quirky. She's a rescue dog with some some history, and she does not like it when other dogs come up to her. She gets very upset. And so when I'm walking her and an off-leash dog comes up to me, that's the last thing I want to see. And, you know, I have to sometimes pick her up and carry her out of the park when there's unleashed dogs and the owner's not nearby. And I find that very irritating. So I understand that people want to have their dogs off leash, and I understand also that most owners are very responsible, but it doesn't take too many bad owners to mess it up. And that's why if you have a fenced in dog park, if someone's inattentive for a little bit, the ramifications is so much less. And it's just not dogs pestering other dogs. Like my son, when he was young, he just loved dogs. He was a toddler and he was at the park and a playful dog knocked him down, and it frightened him so much he had a dog phobia for years after that. And that was a playful dog. It could have been worse. I mean, if you look at CDC, they have stats on how many dog bites there are and how many people have to go to the hospital for dog bites. And having the dogs inside of a fenced pen is a much better solution. The worst case, it's much, much better. Granted, most of the dog bites don't happen at parks, but still you're increasing the risk by having more dogs running around without leashes. But also, it isn't just dogs pestering other people, they can hurt themselves. And I was in Midtown one day and an off-leash dog came off and jumped in traffic, and the car right in front of me hit it. And it was a big dog and kind of got caught under the car before it got run over. And it was still alive, but it was severely hurt. And it was really a terrible, awful thing to see. And when I see something like that, and this dog's in front of my car dying and yelping in pain, I really don't think we should be doing anything to encourage unfenced off-leash dog parks, and that's what this does. I do appreciate that Peter put that fence up front. That's certainly helped, but that's not going to guarantee it. And again, we'd be much better off just having a permanent fenced-in dog park. And you have the whole dog waste issue. I mean, when we lived near Hoover Park, that would be the northeast side of the park, we just couldn't use because there was so much dog poop. Our kids, if they played in that area, where they'd come down, they'd have poop on their pants or poop on their shoes. And so it's real. And again, I think most dog owners are good about it, but it doesn't take too many bad dogs out there to make a mess and make parts of the park unusable. And that's not making the park more flexible, it's making it less flexible. And so I always wondered, like, well, where's all this dog waste coming from? And when my son was playing at Middlefield, playing Little League, we saw firsthand what was happening. Is back in those days, they had spaces in the fences so dogs could get into the outfield. And periodically dogs would run into that. And sometimes the dog owners would be there and get the dog out right away. But it was amazing how many times we'd be yelling, dog, dog, dog. And then the owner was in a circle with his back to his dog. He had no idea where his dog was. And so when you see stuff like that, it's not surprising that we end up with dog poo over the yard. If he doesn't know where his dog is, he doesn't know if his dog's pooing or not. So again, we'd be better off if people really do want to chat with their friends and not pay attention to their dogs. The ramifications in a fenced dog park are much less. And I'm really, these 2-hour windows, I would find that very annoying if I had to go to the dog park and had to fit this in. And I'm really afraid that that's going to stretch. People are going to be a little early or a little late. And they're going to say, oh, it was legal 15 minutes ago, I'm going to just keep on doing it. And enforcement's very expensive. That's something we know about off-leash dogs. We have rules right now that we don't enforce just because it's too expensive to enforce it. And so I'm afraid that if this continued for any type of period of time, the bad behavior would come out. I mean, maybe during the pilot program, people would be good, but if they're flouting the rules today, they're going to be flouting it 2 years from now. So I don't have any illusion that this is going to get rid of the off-leash dog. In fact, it may encourage it. So we have a leash law in Palo Alto, and it wasn't arbitrary. It was made for good reasons. And this pilot project doesn't mitigate these problems. And so we're asking council to change the leash laws. And we're just saying, well, we're hoping that there's not going to be problems. That we don't have mitigations for that. So, the old saying, hope isn't strategy. What has changed of the situation compared to when they put the leash laws in. So again, I think the far better solution is fence it off. We lose some soccer fields, but we have more soccer fields than dog parks right now. Make it a permanent dog park that you can bring your dog to anytime and not have to juggle your schedule around soccer games. And having a fence there, it eliminates the dog interactions between leash dogs, between humans, with cars. It provides the dog community with more hours. And again, if the owner's a little attentive, it's not nearly as bad. So I think a fenced dog park is a much better solution. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Peter, before we move on, could you display the slide that has the 4 or 5 specific areas of comments you're looking for from the commission, just to help us keep that in mind as we make our comments? And then I think I will ask a member of the Park Amenities Ad Hoc to speak next, the group that's been working to help develop the dog park, the off-leash dog park pilot, and perhaps you can speak to some of the issues and questions we've just heard. Anne, would you like to speak?
Yeah, I would. And before I start, I would like to say that I think Commissioner Recto makes some good points about fenced dog parks. And I'm remembering back to when we first started with both the restrooms and the dog parks, when I started on the ad hoc committee that had to do with park amenities. And we did go through all of the situation about there not being enough dog parks, and there need to be more, both, especially in North Palo Alto, but also in South Palo Alto, for all the reasons that we've all heard. And those reasons are still valid, but obviously we don't have enough money to put a dog park every place we have a playground. And, you know, in a way you could say that that's too bad. So we came to the notion, based on what other communities had been doing, that creating a off-leash program for dogs would be a solution that we'd like to look at. Thus was the pilot program started. And I think this particular pilot program got to Ramos Park because Peter heard from the community, well, what about a dog park? And so as it evolved, and there've been lots of meetings, lots of discussion with not only the dog stakeholders, but also the athletic fields and others in the community, I'm very much in favor of seeing this pilot program go ahead. I think it's been very thoughtfully done. The only thing that I'm concerned about is that the late start or the late opening, or the late closing, the 5 o'clock in the evening in the winter time, and it would be great if that hour could be adjusted. But I also think that it is a good program to go forward and see if we can make it work. And as somebody said, we have to get it right the first time, because we can't transport it to other places in Palo Alto if it's not working at Ramos. So I think, Chair, that's what I have specifically to say about it. I do like the evaluation form. I'm happy to participate in that. The schedule of pilot implementation, I think March or April is probably a good time, with all the rest of what we're asking the staff to do right now between Foothill Park and COVID and parks and open and all of that. I worry about the pressure on all of them. So I think I'll stop right now. And David, I think you're my colleague on the ad hoc committee now, so it's up your comments.
Actually,
Thank you. And before we proceed, Peter, do you have is there a slide that has the list of review the off-leash dog park rules, review of the area times of use?
I don't have a specific slide.
Okay. Thank you.
These were basically the things I wanted to talk about. Mostly it's this area down here that we want to review these guys.
Great, thanks. I was referring to the presentation. I can see that's not a slide. Excuse me, I was referring to the written report. David, please proceed.
I'd actually like to go last.
We're only two of us, so you're last.
I know, no, I would like to go last.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought Jeff wanted us to, as ad hoc
I
people,
know,
go first.
I know, but I'd like to go last.
Okay. And I'll also just comment real quickly that the members of the public that have their hands up, you've had an opportunity to speak, and it's not within the format of the meeting to have a second opportunity to speak. Commissioner
All
Olson.
right, then I'm going to speak now.
Excuse me, David, I was not speaking to you. I was speaking to a member of the public
Oh,
that
okay.
had their hand raised. Commissioner Olson.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions on the overlaid map. Is there a fence that's between the park and the homes there on the right of the park?
There are wooden fences. It's kind of typical,
Okay.
yeah, 6-foot tall wood fences that are there.
Got it.
Most of the neighbors do have gates that directly access the park itself as well, which was a concern for them, that if the area was fenced off, that then their actually access to the park would be diminished. But
Yeah.
they do have a fence.
Yeah, so we don't have to worry about dogs running in there, which is great. On the timing, I had I know in our prior agenda item, we're building a fence along Meadow Drive. Will that fence be up before this pilot starts?
No, it will not, but we probably will put a temporary fence out there for the pilot. Darren and I have not discussed that yet, but that's something that we definitely could consider doing.
Okay, yeah, I think that would make a lot of sense, just because there is really no other barrier there for the dog that decides to chase that squirrel or whatnot. Okay, great. And then on the evaluation form, the only feedback that I had was that, we had a question about sort of dogs being aggressive toward other dogs. We might want to address like sort of dogs being, I don't know if aggressive is the right word, but where the whole like jumping up on other people, because I do know that does bug a lot of people, and I'm sensitive to Commissioner Rectal's comment there. But overall, I am very supportive of this proposal, and I really appreciate the overwhelming community support for this, both tonight and in the survey that you had. I think that's really great. And I think I've mentioned before that prior to Palo Alto, I was in a community that had off-leash hours very similar to this at a park that was our most loved park. It would be like doing it at Mitchell Park here. And we had, we didn't come from a community of angels, but there was not dog poop everywhere. There were no problems. People really did clean up after their pets. They knew if they could have a pet that could be off leash or not. We personally couldn't, because our dog is just not the type to stay in this, a certain area. But people do a great job of policing one another in a very kind way. And it's a great way to build community with that morning coffee and chatting about your dogs. So I appreciate the attempt to make this work here, and hopefully we have some really good feedback through the pilot that shows it'll be a success. I hope that's the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lemire.
Thank you. I do share some of Commissioner Rectal's concerns with dogs off leash as well. And some of that comes from personal experience actually at Ramos Park, where we would have Little League practice as well as some soccer practices, and sometimes people would have their dogs off leash there, and you'd get some interference. But with that said, just in the spirit of giving feedback on the pilot program, I would like to address the evaluation form, and just want to get some clarification on how they would do the evaluation form in terms of is the baseline starting at 10? So if you observe a dog and the dog does a good job and nothing happens, is that a 10 straight down the line? So that's one question. And then figuring out a metric where certainly the number of dogs that are there will have a big impact on what the final score is. And so just figuring out how that is calculated, or whatever the formula that you would use with that in terms of taking into account how many dogs are there at the time. I don't know if anybody can comment on the evaluation form or who put that together.
I can comment on it. Say, yes, it starts at 10 and it works its way down. So we could probably switch around the numbers there and go from high to low. It would probably make it more understandable and direct. I need more clarification on your second question.
Oh, so my second question was that it seems that if only one dog is at the park for that time of evaluation and gets all 10s, that would artificially inflate the average of the evaluations.
Right. I would agree with you on that. I think that's why we added just the question of how many dogs that were there. So, if.
Yeah, my only comment is just that as we get these stats to
no, but I would say
be aware and be alert of how we calculate and how we interpret them. That's all.
Right. No, and I agree with you. And I think that if there is only one dog there, then there are some of these questions are kind of questions because they're kind of interaction between the dogs themselves. So, we could say that you have to have a minimum of 3 dogs for the evaluation. For the scoring to be counted, I don't know. That's something that we could decide to however we wanted to figure that out. I do agree with you that just having one dog out there does seem. I don't think that will happen myself. I think that from the high use of off-leash dog activity that exists in the park currently, that the dog owners will definitely use the time, and there will be multiple dogs using the area. So, but
right. And I may have missed this in the presentation. I know you had a long list of rules and regulations. Is that something that there will be signage with that, or is that something that how's that communicated to those that use it?
We'll have somewhere. I would say somewhere in the middle here, we'll definitely have a sign that'll show the defined area and then have all the definitely rules. And I think that we talked about also having waste bags there, but no receptacles. So people have to be responsible to take the waste, and we don't have to employ more maintenance to go out there and dump it, but we can supply the waste bags and then clearly have the rules and the area defined on a sign out there. That's easy to see.
Excellent. Thank you so much for all of your work. I appreciate the ad hoc as well for the time that they put into this.
Thank you. And I'll make some comments now. Peter, thank you for the presentation and your work with the community and the ad hoc and developing this program, and with the rest of staff as well. Regarding the rules, I have one question about the rule regarding leash in possession at all times. This is the 4th bullet in the rules. If I understand this correctly, are you suggesting that the dog owner should have the leash on their body the whole time, that their dog is off leash, as opposed to sitting on the, I'm just wondering if that's pragmatic.
Yeah, I think it's the idea that the dog would be off leash, but if they showed aggression, they'd have to put it on leash and then remove the dog. The leash doesn't have to stay on the dog, but they have to leash it at the point they're aggressive for removal.
I guess I was referring to something a little different than the specific rules there that was in the package. But that's okay. I get the gist of what you're looking for. And I agree that a leash should be available to use on a dog when needed. Regarding the discussion of times of the park, I do appreciate the conflict between activities on the fields and activities in the proposed off-leash area, that they are quite close to each other. And in addition to that, the proposed area for the dog run is used perhaps more frequently during something like a soccer practice or a baseball practice by younger siblings or who want to run around, or other people who come to the park and want to do something. This becomes kind of the overflow area. And so I think from the standpoint of both community use and the potential for conflict with the off-leash dogs running into the organized activity, I think I am in favor of making sure that the off-leash hours do not include the same hours as soccer practices, baseball practices, and the like.
Jeff, can I bring one thing up for that?
Please.
Because the run is so long, I don't know if we want to look at a nuance where, maybe if the location of the sign is kind of where my pointer is here, that if in the daylight savings hours that we want to say that, it's open at 4 o'clock, but it's only open on the east side of the sign, and it's a smaller space that's a little further away and more detached from the actual field. If just to try to get the other hour in there. I'm just throwing it out there as an idea. So
thank you, Peter. I think that's worth considering with the ad hoc and with the dog owner working committee or stakeholders that you're working with. That sounds like a good line to pursue. Also, I'm wondering if the wording and effectively the policy would change perhaps from sunset to dusk to provide potentially more opportunity for late hour use of the off-leash area. I'm wondering if the period between sunset and dusk is pragmatic to be used for that and would be appreciated by the community.
Mm-hmm.
Regarding the evaluation form, kind of touching further on the ideas that Jeff Lemire was bringing up. I like the idea of data gathering and a data-driven form. I'm concerned about the way that a form would be used purely objectively without entering in subjective data. And I think the example of the number of dogs that would increase the likelihood of a lower score is significant to consider. I also think the amount of time that someone's monitoring will have an obvious impact on that as well. I'm also wondering if some of the questions shouldn't be weighted the same as others. In other words, it seems like the questions may not be appropriate to be equally weighted. Some of the questions are phrased to measure negative behavior versus positive behavior. And so negative behavior starting at 10 is a little non-intuitive. So I'd suggest working to realign all of the phrasing in a positive orientation. Questions regarding noise, I think are really relative. And I think something we need to consider is there is a lot of off-leash use at the park right now. And we recognize that the city doesn't have enforcement available. And so we can either come up with other ways to work to change this behavior, or we can work to come up with a solution to accommodate the behavior, which is essentially the will of the community, and is certainly a nuanced and balanced approach that needs to be undertaken to consider the needs of the whole community, not just the dog owners, but others. And I do appreciate concerns about off-leash dogs startling people and startling other dogs. I've also heard from dog owners that they don't like to go to the formal dog parks because the dog behavior is a little bit more aggressive there than at the de facto off-leash areas such as at Ramos Park, where it tends to be a little bit friendlier and lower key. So that's something important to consider as well. I'm not sure if Commissioner Recto was suggesting that we'd be losing a soccer field by adding a full dog park or the off-leash area. That area isn't really appropriate for a soccer field. The turf quality is not very even and not very good. So I think in general that it's an appropriate area for dog usage. Just a couple of general comments to staff for recommendations like this. I think it would be helpful to reference the master plan sections that are particularly applicable when bringing a suggestion like this to the commission. And this doesn't just apply to dog parks. This is a broader request. And also, I think it would be helpful to get some sort of signage up in place at the park so that we can alert the broader community to what we're planning to do. I think that Howard Hoffman's group has been well notified about what's going on, and that's great. We want to hear specifically from the people who have interest in this new program, but we want to make sure we have an opportunity to hear from the community at large. So I'm thinking that this applies to both public meetings moving forward, which you may be posting notices for, but also for commission meetings to make sure that we have a notification. I will now turn things over to David Moss for his comments, but thank you for the efforts, Peter, and the sensitive way in which you're looking at trying to balance the needs of the community here.
Thank you. As the other member of the ad hoc, we've been working on this issue for several months now. And I did want to hear from the public and from the other commissioners who I have not talked to or known. I didn't know their sentiments before, and before I speak, because I probably have 9 items to talk about. And I, like Commissioner Reckdahl, I'm hesitant about this this off-leash area. And the main reason, I think, is the close proximity to the playing field and that 5 to 7 p.m. evening slot. If that were removed, completely removed, I would feel much better and just have it during school hours. But because dog owners like to have that evening time in the daylight, it completely conflicts with the playing field right next door. And I suggested that maybe there be a fence, temporary fence between the two, and that was not recommended. I suggest to Darren that you no longer use that field for games or for practices after the time, the evening time that you have this off-leash dog area. So if you want to have it from 3 to 5 in the evening on during the winter, then I say there's no practices after school on this field. I would even go one step further and have you put a fence around the playground. That does not help for elderly people and parents with strollers walking around the perimeter. They're still subject to dogs running free, having a good time. The comments made from the public talk about the wonderful camaraderie between dog owners and speaks nothing to the non-dog owners who are using the park. So if the dog owners want camaraderie, they are far better off with a dog park. And that way, the non-dog users, dog owners, and the dog owners can stay out of each other's way. So that's the main thing, is that 5 to 7 p.m. Evening shift. I would say no games or practices on that field during that time. The second thing I wanted to mention is that 60% of the people who came to the community meetings wanted a dog park. They didn't say they want an off-leash dog park. They said they want a dog park. And the only reason that we are even looking at an off-leash dog park is because of 5 neighbors who are a little bit worried about the noise, and also about their access through their back gate into the park. Well, we have dozens of parks in this city, and no neighbor has, very few neighbors have access into the park from their back fence. And if that's the concern, I would have the dog park fenced in that ends 3 feet before their back fence. So I think a dog park, not an off-leash park, would be far, far better. The other thing, going back to what Commissioner Lemaire said about statistics, if you just have 1 or 2 bad incidents, they're not going to show up statistically, because there's going to be, as the public has said, most of the time people are well behaved, dog owners are well behaved, dogs are well behaved, and so most of the time we won't have a problem. When there is a problem, and I just witnessed one last week at Mitchell Park, where a dog was on leash but was allowed to run up to a 4-year-old who was scared to death and ran screaming to their mother. And I have that same situation with with one of my kids as when they were a child. It's going to happen. The other item I have is that the North Palo Altans said that they might or might not use this area, and that it's really for locals and it's not a regional park. But I just don't know how you're going to keep that that situation. I don't see it happening, especially with social media. It's going to become, and that leads into my next point, which is 20 dogs. That's an unbelievable number of dogs to be off leash. When I live behind Coverly Field, and there are many times when the field is empty and you'll have 1 or 2 or maybe 3 dogs off leash. One time in all of this past, I'd say 3 years, have I seen more than maybe 5 or 6 dogs. And they have the entire Coverly Field to play on, not this tiny little area. So 20 dogs seems outrageous. I would say 5 dogs. And then the other thing is that this thing about not having their dogs off leash after dark, that is an issue in the winter, because we don't, especially in the evening. So I would suggest, and one other thing, and that is that the fence on East Meadow does not go all the way across, and so dogs can certainly still run out into the street. They can still run into this playground. So I don't see it's going to be that effective. That was all of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to offer commissioners an opportunity for follow-up questions or another round of comments. And I'd like to start that off by asking members of the ad hoc, Ann, or perhaps staff, if you could describe activity and interactions typical of the dog parks we have now and compare that to what we're envisioning for the off-leash dog pilot area, which I envision is more similar to the pop-up off-leash social groups that we have on parks at parks right now, because I'm not sure these are not apples and oranges we're comparing on a certain level.
Jeff, could you kind of restate that? I'm not exactly sure what you're asking.
Sure. Could you? I'm wondering if you can describe the activities that we have at current dog parks in terms of the interactions of dogs and people versus what we're envisioning at the off-leash pilot area. Are these? Would you say these are the same, or they're different? And if they're different, how do they vary?
Well, when I have been to the mostly, well, actually to all three of our dog parks, well, now four, you know, when there are people there, they talk, and when there's not people, the dogs just, I mean, I'm not exactly, as you can tell, understanding the sort of the question. Sometimes there are no people at Greer Park. Sometimes there are more people over at Piers. And I think people just either talk to each other or watch their dogs and all of that. And they behave like they do at a dog park. I think that the off-leash program probably people, I would think that the owners are more concerned about watching where their dogs are, because it's interesting how the dogs know not to go where they're not supposed to go. When I was in Mountain View, the off-leash program seemed to go fairly well. And that's kind of what, in talking to the staff and talking to Mountain View, that's kind of what we based all of this on. So I don't know that that's very helpful. I don't know that you can compare this. I mean, I go back to thinking that listening to all the conversations, yeah, it would be great to have a dog park in every park that we have a playground, but that's not realistic. And so I think it's important to try to figure out how to accommodate different stakeholders in our parks. And I believe that this pilot program is what we suggested would be something that we could try with some pretty strict controls on it for a certain length of time and see if it would work or if it wouldn't work. It seems like it will work based on Mountain View's experience and some of the other parks that we've heard about, but maybe not. But I think it's important to try it. So just my thought.
Staff, Darren, Peter, do you have any comments on what I'm suggesting, or would you like me to clarify what I'm suggesting?
Thank you, Chair Darren Anderson. I understand your question and comment, and maybe I could offer a little bit of information that might help illuminate this. I visited every single one of Mountain View's off-leash areas, which have been in place for multiple years. And I visit every one of them at multiple times during the day, making note and talking to both users and other park users to get their feedback on how successful it is, what kind of problems there were. And I made notes and shared it with the ad hoc. At that time, it was a previous iteration of this ad hoc. Christian McCauley was on it. This was quite some time ago. Some of the things I noticed were not too unfamiliar with regular dog parks. That is, as people approach the park, whether it's an off-leash area or dedicated one, let them off-leash the moment they touch grass. So as they're walking up to the sidewalk to the park, that dog's off-leash, and he's sprinting through all different parts of the park, including the playground. And eventually he'll join somewhat of a pack. And I saw this repeated over and over in the neighborhood of about 15 people. It seemed to be about 15 dogs max. Every time I went, that was the most. And they were mainly congregated in one large area. There was usually one or two random dogs that wanted to explore, but the bulk stayed there. So I say that, try to put the warts and all in the picture. It's not perfect. There will be problems. The dogs will migrate out of that area for sure. But when I talked to every single resident, or excuse me, park visitor that was there, no one seemed to have any problems. And I heard that over and over. It was really surprising to me. Even parents in the playgrounds as dogs were in there. So anyways, that was my experience. I think it's really valuable to see it with your own eyes, to walk those. You know, maybe I had 12 visits, and on another 12, it might look a little different, but that's my feedback.
So Darren,
And-
thanks for that. And it was a really good explanation that you gave us in the ad hoc a couple of years ago. It may be that commissioners should go on a field trip and go and look for themselves to satisfy that this would be a good thing to do.
And did you say that these parks had games and practices going on simultaneously?
No, I did not see that. I didn't see any of the places I visited where there was a game going on at the same time.
Or practices?
I did not.
Yeah, and is it possible that the people at the playground were somewhat self-selecting, and if they were not comfortable with the off-leash dogs in the area, they would not be at that playground? So your opinion poll may be a bit skewed.
Absolutely.
Just going to bring up another aspect of this as well. I think we proposed the area in blue that's shown on the plan here because that's basically kind of the extent of that turf area that's over there. It gives the most expansive and open area that we could along that corridor for off-leash use. I know that David and others have expressed concern about the proximity of the off-leash area to the play area that's over here.
Sorry, Peter, we're not seeing your pointer again.
Oh, there you go. You see it now?
Yes,
so maybe, I mean, the other thing that we really haven't discussed is, do we want to define a smaller off-leash dog area? Do we want to just say that this is the space and that this is not in the space to help? There is a very dense planting right here and a lot along the edge there that kind of already makes a natural barrier from the park, from this space over there. So that would be another option that we can consider. I would say that if, let's say the dog off leash, if we do move forward with the off leash pilot and it's not very successful, that this location right here seems to be not a bad spot for a fenced dedicated dog park as well. I think that when you start to define this entire area as a fenced dog park, that's quite a bit of land for the whole park area to use. But there may be a way to even start to use this little dead end pathways, the way that the gate leads into there, and then the fenced area is here. It's still a good sized area, definitely larger than most of the dog parks that we have. So that's another option too that we can look at. That's not really something I thought we would discuss, but definitely I think along this conversation that, defining maybe a smaller area that is a little bit more buffered from the park itself could also be something on the table as well.
And Peter, can you remind me, when we talked about briefly in the ad hoc about a fence between the playing field and that off-leash area, you said that that was problematic, and I can't remember what you said.
Actually, I was in support of the fence myself. I think that when we talked to other staff, that they felt that the fence was problematic to have out there. But there could be a segment of fence that just runs along here that divides this space, so there is a line, but it's opened at either end, or it's not all the way fenced off. So again, I think there's multiple options that we can explore.
Yeah, fence or plantings. Fence or plantings.
I think for this purpose that the fence is probably the way to go.
Yeah.
The planting is difficult and it just requires a lot more maintenance and water and time to grow. The fence would give you something day one that would define the edge.
Do other commissioners have further comments?
Yeah, I have a question for Peter. Peter, when you're talking about making that area that you have designated right now smaller, do you have an idea of how much smaller it would be and how it would compare, for instance, to Greer Park Dog Park?
It would be a lot bigger than Greer Park. It would basically, I would say that, you know, just by looking at this and because I know that that dense planting is right there, that somewhere here would be the division line. And it would be this space here. So it'd be a little less than half of what we're proposing now for the off-leash area, but still, you can see there's 2 houses here. So, you know, you're talking about basically 2 full lots where houses could be built here that would be open area, off-leash area. So it would still be a good sized area. I would say that for Greer, it's probably 10 times the size of Greer. So it's still a good size. And again, if let's say that the dog park pilot, we go forward and it doesn't succeed, we can always come back and consider this space as a fenced off defined dog park.
Thank you. Other comments from commissioners? I have a couple more questions.
Jeff, I would also say that the dog park pilot, that this Ramos Park is interesting in the fact that it does kind of have this passive, you know, not overly programmed turf area that is sets up nice for off-leash dog use, but it also could again have a defined dog park fenced area. The interesting part about having the pilot though and understanding the pilot is I think that at some parks, especially at Eleanor Pardee Park, where we talked about dog parks before in the past, that it's difficult to define or figure out where a fenced area would go that wouldn't really divide or really mess up the entire feel of the whole park. That, you know, perhaps understanding if a pilot works here, if maybe a pilot could work at that location just because of the difficulty of actually trying to fence an area off. And we know that that park in particular has a high population of off-leash dog park users. So.
Thanks. I appreciate that. A few more comments. So I do like your idea of potentially considering a smaller off-leash area. I think providing a buffer between the field area and the off-leash area is a good idea in general. I do not like the idea of fencing off the lower left portion area between the playing field and the dog park. I think that will negatively impact the open feeling of the park. And I think overall, particularly for if something is a temporary hour program, I think that would really detract. I did want to ask about the comment that was made about we were considering the off-leash program only because 5 neighbors voiced concerns about a formal dog park. Is this accurate? Are costs involved as a
costs are definitely involved. Currently, we do not have the budget in our current CIP to fence an entire area this size. We just don't have the funds for it right now. So it's on that level as well. And then of course the response to the neighbors that are adjacent to it. So those 2 factors were the main leading factors. I can't say if we decided to have a dog park, when or if we could ever, I think when or we could eventually get funding for such a thing, but I think that in this current time that if we decide to have a dog park there and don't do the pilot, that we could be waiting years to get funding to actually install the dog park there.
Thank you. And I also was under the understanding that the idea of an off-leash dog park is something that's been batted around for a while, and we've been looking for an opportunity and location to have a pilot program to try this out. So this seems to fit that bill. So I think these are other considerations of why this might.
No, I think for the off-leash dog purpose that this is a good location to try it out. We do know that there are definitely a lot of dog users that allow their dogs off leash in the park. and we have this area, we have some means to establish and run the pilot. So I think that there's definitely some validation there for it. Yes.
Thank you. So in summary, I think we've heard a lot of very good feedback representing various points of views and pros and cons to consider. I'm not quite sure how this information directly feeds to offer direction to staff and the ad hoc on how to proceed on this. And I'm wondering if it would be helpful if each commissioner made a just very brief 15-second summary statement where they stand in terms of their thoughts on generally moving forward with a pilot or preferring a fenced-in dog park or open to various considerations. Would that be helpful, Peter, or do you think you have a good enough sense already?
No, I think that would definitely be helpful. I mean, I think we're definitely going to look at, of course, the comments that we received about the evaluation form and things of that nature. We will definitely be going and having a full community meeting. We'll be sending out the 1,500 postcards to the surrounding neighborhood as we did before, posting signs. So it will be a full-scale community meeting about this topic to get more feedback from them on it. So just to keep that in mind.
Right, thanks. Well, I think what I'll do is I'll offer each commissioner an opportunity to briefly re-summarize your point of view, or you can let your previous comments stand as well at your discretion. So would anyone like to speak?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to speak, Jeff. I would like to move ahead with the pilot with the option to reduce the amount of land that we're using.
Thank you.
My preference would be the whole pilot with the whole land that we have now.
Commissioner Moss.
My recommendation, either reduce the amount of space or move the off-leash pilot to Eleanor Pardee where there's less fields use and practice use in the back corner there, or stop using this park for field for games and for practices after 3 o'clock or at the beginning of the off-leash dog time.
Thank you. Anyone else? If you'd like to speak, go ahead and unmute yourself and speak. Commissioner Olson.
I'll just repeat, I am supportive, but also mindful that, you know, any off-leash pilot is only going to be as successful as the people who come and do a good job. So I do think we need to, I like all of the community engagement and monitoring that will go on. I think we have to be sensitive and flexible as we hear of any concerns there.
Thank you. And I'll just comment that I am open to the idea of pursuing a pilot project. I think it's important to hear from the whole community, both the dog owner community and the potentially people with an alternate opinion. I do think pursuing the smaller area is a good approach, and perhaps also considering different seasonal hours would be worth pursuing. One other comment I'll just add that I forgot to mention, I think perhaps a 12-month pilot would be appropriate to be able to assess during all seasons of the year, and because the time constraints are different during the different seasons. Does anyone have any further comments before we close this out? Thank you very much, everyone, for insightful and thoughtful comments. And I think we've given staff plenty to consider on this. And it's one of our more interesting conversations we've had with various points of view, raising valid opinions.
No, and staff wants to, I'll thank you for your feedback and input on this. It's definitely, I think it, again, important to get it right. And it's good to hear everyone's feedback on it. And we will be bringing it back to you, of course, after the community meeting and sharing with you their input as well to make a final determination on it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll now move on to our next item, which is Parks and Recreation Commission outreach best practices. And this is something that the Vice Chair and I wanted to discuss with the commission. It's a little bit ironic that this evening we have a very well-attended meeting with the number of members of the public actually outnumbering the commissioners and staff, and council members are present. And that's very heartening. But overall, I think there's a feeling that our attendance hasn't been very strong at our meetings the past year, and that's a little bit different in that some other commissions and city council have had quite active participation via Zoom meetings, where it's a little bit less of a commitment for someone to speak and to attend, have the option of just attending a small portion of a meeting. So we just wanted to talk about what we're doing right now as a commission for community outreach, how we can potentially improve it, serving as a conduit between the community and staff and council is one of our important roles. We all know that attendance and participation varies broadly depending on an agenda topic. But with that said, last month, and this is really what kind of initiated a discussion between Ann and myself, when we had the swimming annual report, the aquatics annual report, and the golf course annual report, we didn't have any comments from the public, and we have had this in the past. And so we want to talk about what we're doing for community outreach, what we can potentially do better, and here are your ideas and how we can work on improving this together. In addition, as part of the latest guidelines and handbook for the boards, commissions, and committees, the BCCs, that's being passed down from City Council, we are going to be requested to provide some sort of annual data on public participation. So this is something we want to track quantitatively moving forward, and I think we could all agree that there's room where we would like to see more people attending. Vice Chair Cribbs, would you like to follow up with anything?
Well, no, I think Jeff, you've said it, very well. I was very surprised last meeting that we didn't have swimmers and golf course people speaking to us. I think community participation is incredibly important. In the time of Zoom, it seemed to me that it would be easier for people to speak rather than more difficult. And so I talked to a couple of people in the community about the commission meetings, and they said, well, I'm not even sure I know how to do that. Well, we're all smart people and they should be able to figure it out, right? But I think it would be really useful if we all thought about maybe creating, inviting people to join a Park and Recreation Commission mailing list, or making sure that they get a notice from the city clerk's office that there is a Park and Recreation Commission meeting every month. And there are interesting topics that have to do with the future of Palo Alto, especially recreation and parks. And so if we look for different ways to make that clear, both from the clerk's office and also in the Enjoy catalog and how to sign up, I think that we could develop a pretty good group that would support recreation and parks. And I always think that recreation and parks need a voice. We have a lot of different programs and a lot of different support groups, but overall, it's such an important part of the community, and that always comes up with community studies. But I really think it's important for us to see if we can reach out and encourage more people to participate.
Thanks. And one step that's definitely in the right direction is something that got sorted out today. There is an email subscriber option so that members of the community or including ourselves can subscribe to Parks and Recreation Commission agenda notifications. And this is similar to the other city notifications that are available. A couple other boards and commissions use these right now, but not too many. And this is something that's been suggested that all boards, commissions, and committees utilize to improve transparency and public notification. And I think when that's done, that will increase the number of people that will subscribe to the Parks and Rec notifications as well. When more people are going to the site looking to subscribe to something and seeing options, that's going to increase things. So if any of you are subscribed to this already, you should have received a notification email today. This is the first one that there were some hiccups and staff has got this sorted out. So this is an example of a step in the right direction. But things like being able to do specific outreach to groups that would be specifically impacted or would have specific input on an agenda item is something we should focus on. And so I'm interested in hearing from other commission members what your thoughts and ideas on this are, and also from Councilmember Koo, if you have any ideas for us as well. Would anyone like to speak first?
I will be happy to
Commissioner Moss,
talk.
followed by Commissioner Lemare.
I think we should be looking at our successes, and there are several. The community meetings that Peter Jensen has been leading for the CIPs for the different parks are very well attended, and we've been getting tremendous response and feedback from those meetings. And so taking the example of the swimming, the rink and the pool, if there were some way that we could have community meetings at the pool or of the different stakeholder groups, I think that would be extremely valuable. The second success we've had is in spreading the word through our neighborhood groups. Commissioner Reckdahl has done a great job with the Ventura neighborhood. I can feed information to the Green Meadow and the Greendale communities very easily. And they are, we can get a lot of response from those neighborhood groups, as we saw with Boulware Park and the North Ventura project. We got tremendous response that way. And then the third is that we have groups like the pickleball club and the tennis players and the dog owners association and the Magical Bridge Foundation. Those stakeholders, those groups, and we also had it with the Coverly community. Those groups give us tremendous feedback. And so we should be plugging into them on many more subjects, I guess. Yeah, that would be my suggestion. Those three ways.
Thank you. And before moving on, I'll just ask if there's any members of the public who would like to speak on this, since I failed to ask previously. But if you'd like to speak, raise your hand, please. Otherwise, Commissioner Lemare, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I think any outreach we can do to groups in advance to notify them of agenda items is important. At one time, I received next door notifications for planning and transportation meetings. And I don't know if that was something I subscribed to or if that was just pushed out to me. And I'm wondering, do we use Nextdoor to notify about meetings, or Is there a way to use that platform, which is a platform that many people do have and is widely used, in addition to the emails that you could subscribe to through the city?
I'll take that. We definitely do use Nextdoor. We use all the social media platforms that we can. We also have Twitter and Facebook that we do post to. For advertising for my community meetings, I do send out a large swath of mailed postcards. But I do think that what David was saying just a minute ago, that the individual neighborhoods or areas of town that are defined, that have a active neighborhood leading or leaders or group, and someone that has the email list is very, very powerful in getting the message out there. For most of my community meetings, I usually email the representative of the area, and they usually send out an email that I craft to their mailing list, and that is a very powerful way to get people to meetings. I was going to suggest just on that maybe there could be more discussion about this, but maybe there is an ad hoc person from the Parks and Recs Commission that is takes that on as their project every year and is kind of the leader of those neighborhood associations, and maybe just meets with them every year and talks to them about the power that they have on getting the message out to people and how it is important, and updating the lists, their email lists, and getting people involved and input could be a very effective way of helping to disperse information. There definitely are neighborhood groups that don't have very good representation, that don't send out emails when we contact them, and they don't have the input that other neighborhoods do. So I think it is a very grassroots way of getting information out. It's not really from us, it's from one of them asking their community to come out to do it, which is much more powerful than just us asking. So that's something I think that could be considered.
Thanks, Peter. I think that's a good idea, and perhaps reaching out to Palo Alto neighborhoods as a starting point, as the umbrella group for all of the neighborhood associations would be the right way to go. And I had a follow-up question regarding our current social media outreach. Are we noticing each of our monthly meetings and the agenda items via social media, or just specific community outreach targets?
I'm not aware. Darren or Catherine have to answer if we send out about the meeting, the monthly meeting. I don't think that we do.
I don't think so.
So go ahead.
I was just agreeing. That is correct. We don't do it for the PRC meetings.
How do they get it in the paper, the Palo Alto paper?
They contact us.
Ah,
Or they
Or I
can,
send- or directly send it to them, or they're on a distribution list as well.
or they can look for posted agendas.
Correct.
So one other change that's going to be coming with the new guidelines for BCCs is that our agendas will need to get posted a full week before our meeting date. And so this will provide a better opportunity for community outreach, in that the agenda will be finalized and posted a week in advance. So we'll have more time to spread the word on that, and more time for people to become aware of this and make plans to attend if they are interested. Other comments?
what Commissioner Lemaire said about, oh no, I think it was Anne that said that some people don't know how to get to the meeting. It would be nice if the Zoom link that's sent out is one that's sort of permanent, rather than being sent out each time, Because then if you can send that out ahead of time, or if you can send out a link where they can get to the link, then people know every month where to go and how to do it. But if you do it every meeting differently, it's a little hard to get the message out.
That's true. The clerk's office is going to show me how to keep repeating the same number for the meeting. So I'll look into that.
Right now we have the agenda and the link is on there, which is very nice because you can send someone the PDF of the agenda. But on the webpage, it would be nice if we just had a standing link of this is the current Zoom meeting. Because some people get to the webpage and they don't know to look at the agenda. And they don't see anywhere on the webpage how to find the Zoom link. Another point, last month we had aquatics on and I talked to some swimmers that didn't know about it. And so
Yeah.
that's pretty easy. They all go to one spot. So we could put up a flyer there. We should have done that, is put up a flyer a month before because we know they're coming a month in and saying on this date, we're going to have the annual report. That'd be really easy to do.
Agreed. And that's what we suspected. So having specific audiences targeted based on a given agenda is a great idea. Commissioner Olson?
So quite a few months ago, I believe it was Commissioner Cribbs, had sort of pitched volunteering types of ideas, like at Cubberley, like paint a room or something. And whether we like that particular volunteer opportunity or not, I do think there is value in us sort of getting our hands dirty at the parks and in, you know, with folks who, you know, maybe want to connect with a commissioner and really voice their concerns that they don't want to come to a meeting for, or maybe that breaks the ice for them and they will want to come to a meeting after they, you know, meet someone. And so I know we're in a difficult time and it's probably not too practical right now, which might also be why people aren't really participating as much this year. Generally, I think people are really tapped out, but I would like to think about something that the commission can do with the community to volunteer for any kind of park improvement type of project and just sort of get out there with folks and kind of hear what their concerns are.
That does remind me also that some of us are liaisons to other groups like school district and other groups, and that is another opportunity for the commissioners to outreach.
I'm not sure that we actually have a school district liaison. I know that Keith sits in on the city council and school district meetings, but I think your idea certainly has merit, David, that part of a liaison role could be to pass on monthly agenda information as appropriate, particularly when it's going to have a significant impact or on a topic related to a group.
Yeah, Commissioner Lemaire does has Stanford connections. And so if there's anything that involves Stanford, like the El Camino Park, we have an in to spread the word.
I do think to an extent we need to be careful what we wish for or consider it another way, that when things are going well, we may not always hear from people, and we know when we've had our largest crowds, it's been because of high emotions on our community. It's certainly easier to voice your opinion when you're concerned about something. So I'm not suggesting we need to go out in search of problems, but I think it is important to improve our outreach. Councilmember Koo, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, I was going to just say exactly what you just said. A lot of times at council, we get a lot of comments and emails precisely because it's mostly to rectify an issue that members of the community see or feel. And so it's perhaps that you are doing a great job with community engagement, and Parks and Rec staff are doing fabulous jobs, engaging in their community meetings and so forth. So you don't have as many attendees, because I think for sure if there was a problem, they would let you know. But the council does hear it first. I think a lot of times, if there's a big problems with too much garbage someplace or poop not being picked up, we hear it too. So I think you guys are doing a great job. I don't have much to say, but I do agree that the neighborhood associations, their email lists are pretty extensive. They've been carrying it for a long time. So that would be one place that I do encourage you to go to reach out to the community. And social media, I'm not really sure how much that does, but Nextdoor does get activity. Yeah, so keep it up.
And if you hear something, do you pass it on to Darren in your council meetings?
I don't pass it. I usually pass it on to the city manager, and then I don't know, I may have CC'd Darren once or twice and included Kristen, but we have a hierarchy chart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other question is, are there communities, I think Jeff mentioned that there are communities that are not as solidly represented. Has that come up on council that you wish that there were communities that were more representative to you?
Representative to?
I meant there are some communities like Ventura that are very well organized, and then there are some areas of the city that are not very well organized. That must impact you on the council, not just us on the commissions. That they're not organized, well organized.
Well, which is why the city has multiple channels of communication. So it's not just to the neighborhood association list. They have Nextdoor, but then there might be other names within that community that is included as well. But they use the bigger channels to communicate. And for each of the council members, we also have our email lists that for information and to update people. Some of us, we use that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Lots of great ideas, and I've noted these down. And I think we can all think about individually what we can do to improve outreach. Today I was going for a walk around 4 o'clock at Mitchell Park, and then I thought, hey, I should walk over to Ramos Park and see if there are people out there with dogs that know about the meeting tonight. And of course there were a number of people with dogs off leash, and had some good conversations. Some people did know about the meeting already, and some people didn't know about it. But that speaks to the need to have some sort of posting at a park when we're going to have an agenda item specifically related to it. That's an obvious way to improve outreach. And I appreciate that Councilmember Ku's comments. This is part of our continuous improvement plan, it's reasonable for all of us to continue to strive to be better, and I think there's definitely areas where we can improve here. Does anyone have any further comments? Okay, then we will move on to our next agenda item, which is the commission ad hoc and liaison updates. Does anyone have any questions for commissioners regarding their updates, or did any commissioners have any updates they'd like to add or enhance their descriptions for new updates? Keith.
So, Chair, on the Foothills Park ad hoc, I think our ad hoc would like to work on some sort of it doesn't have to be formal or official resolution, something to commend the staff for not only the years of taking good care of the park, as we may or may not enter into a new phase, but just to thank the staff that's worked so hard over the last 2-3 years on the park and the thoughtful reopening of the park. And I don't think that we're there with all of the language yet, but we'd like to, I think that Jackie and Jeff and I would like to do something from our ad hoc or from the whole commission to really commend the staff for the work that they've done. And we didn't put it in the report.
Thank you. Keith?
Yeah, just an update from Ventura, North Ventura. So the staff put together the plans. They had 3 alternatives on how to design it. And they released that a little more than a week ago. And then last Wednesday, we went to PTC. And they had just a short meeting that they continued till January 13th. So you still have till January 13th to look over, to go to the PTC and look at last website. And I'll send Catherine a link so you guys can go directly to it. The bad news is that all 3 of the alternatives that they produced have very little park space. We're shooting for 4 acres for every 1,000 people. That's the standard in the comp plan and the standard in the parks master plan. And all of them were about 1 or so. But that 1 is a little misleading because they did things like count landscaping strips, and the grass around buildings counted as open space. And so that's a very generous counting on their part. So it's very low. Consider how many people we're putting in there. They're not putting much land in there. So I made a comment about that at the last meeting. You guys are welcome to do that. But again, it's, with this nothing that we've done as a group. So it'd have to be just you as your own personal opinion.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, let's move on to our tentative agenda for our first meeting of 2021, which will be January 26th. Darren?
Thank you, Chair. Sure you can hear me. Bear with me just one second. We've got 2 options for January, and that is the name change for Foothills Park. That one will be on the agenda, pending conversation with Chair and Vice Chair, but that one will be ready to go. And possible discussion on Foothills Park update. These are the ad hoc discussions pertaining to council's direction on Foothills Park. That is looking at a limit and fees, entry fees, and studies, for example. Both of those are potential items for the January meeting. And I should just highlight 2 that we had discussed before. Bayland's interpretive sign by John Iten. I did talk to John, and he isn't available January, but is available February. And then the other one is the potential Tide Gate Park Improvement Ordinance. I have emailed the Water District staff, and I'm waiting for a response whether January or February would work with their schedules. Oh, and excuse me, one other one. Peter explained we could do Bullware Park as well in January.
Thanks. And of course, we will have our reorganization for the commission at the meeting next month as well, electing a chair and vice chair.
The Foothills Park update in January is going to include the results of the referendum and whether or not we opened the park and what the feedback, what you notice, what you observe from that opening. So it'll be exciting.
I don't think we need an agenda item to review the results of the referendum or if the park opens up, but some initial observations certainly could be useful.
It could all be covered under Fort Hills Park update.
Thank you. Anything else? That's seems like it gives us plenty to work on or work with.
Wait, there's one more, and that is that we try very, very hard to have the annual retreat to determine the priorities for the year. We try to have that as early in the year as possible. One year we had it in May, unfortunately. But if we could have it in February, that seems like a really good time to do that. So if somebody could send out a doodle sometime in this next few weeks so that we could sort of have some idea of when to have that. I don't think we should wait till the end of January to think about it, to first start thinking about it.
That's great to bring up, and I certainly am in favor of looking to hold our retreat in early February. I think we will want to wait till we have a council liaison appointed to the commission before we schedule that and before we start considering dates. And I can see Councilmember Koo nodding her head.
Well,
do you know, Lydia, roughly when a council liaison would be appointed?
It differs every year, but I think most of the time we get it by the end of January. The clerk has now started sending out the list for council members to review during the holidays. So we should be looking at it pretty soon. And the council members get to pick first, second, third choices so that the new mayor can start the assignments.
Thank you.
Jeff, I'd like to suggest, and I don't know whether this needs to be a permanent or a temporary or something, that's in next year for discussion at the meeting, maybe as part of Darren's staff report, that we always have something about the return to play and COVID as it's unfolding and things are changing. I have a lot of concerns about what's going to happen to our kids as we all come out of this, as well as what's happening to all of us. And I think it's really important for recreation to keep that in mind and at least be updated by the things that are going on. The city's doing a great job with their newsletter and all of that, but I also think from the recreation and park perspective, it's going to be important to at least mention that topic on a monthly basis. I don't know how other commissioners feel, but.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks, Anna. This sounds more like something that would be included in the department report and something on the agenda and probably fits better under comments and announcements, which we'll hit next. If anybody has any suggestions for the agenda, we'll take that. Otherwise, we'll move on. Okay, so let's move to comments and announcements. And I think we all agree that a standing update on COVID and return to play implications for parks and recreation for our community is something we want to hear about on a monthly basis. And I think that's something that we have been getting every month from Darren and staff, and we appreciate that. And I think it's worth noting our appreciation for keeping us updated on a monthly basis, and it is a ever-changing landscape, sometimes on a weekly basis, sometimes on a daily basis, and I appreciate the work and effort the staff goes through in trying to keep up to date on this. And this is something we can help with as well. Reviewing policy is part of our charter, and to the extent that we can assist by reviewing latest policies and forwarding feedback to staff is something we should consider perhaps formalizing a bit more next year as we create our liaison and ad hoc roles. I do have one other announcement I'd like to make, and as some of you may know, we have a 7th member of our commission that was appointed last night, and she has been attending the meeting as a member of the public. That's Amanda Brown, and she's with us, and we just want to welcome her. She likes to go by Mandy, as she's told me, but I guess if I want to welcome her to commission. I did have an opportunity to speak with her briefly. She hasn't been sworn in yet, so she isn't sitting as a panelist this evening. But I guess if there's any members of the public who'd like to comment on this item, that would be a welcome opportunity.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Hi.
welcome.
I'm very excited and looking forward to it, and been very much enjoying watching this meeting as a member of the public.
Thank you. We look forward to working with you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Welcome.
I have a couple comments.
Please.
Emily Renzel writes for a newsletter that comes out every year for the Citizens Committee to Complete the Refuge. And she is responsible for talking about the Baylands. And two things she mentioned in this most recent newsletter are noteworthy. One is that the Renzel Marsh has been a smashing success as far as bringing back wildlife after the major draining and remodeling of the ponds. There's a tremendous amount of wildlife out there. And every time I drive by there, I see quite a few cars now, people walking around that loop. If you haven't had a chance to do that, I strongly recommend that you take a walk around. The second thing that she mentioned, which is noteworthy, is that 10 years ago, it's hard to believe, but 10 years ago, they took away 10 acres of the Baylands Park for the anabolic digester, and that was 2010. And if they didn't use it, then it reverts back to parkland in 10 years, which is next November. So we need to sometime during this next year talk about that and what we're going to do. So I had totally forgotten about it, but that's what the law says. So those were the two things that she had to say. The second thing I wanted to mention is that I went to the pickleball Palo Alto Pickleball Club annual meeting, and they had several interesting things to say. And I think the most important ones are that they are acutely aware of masking and of singles play, because they have a lot to lose if they screw up. So, and they have 500 members. So they have a tremendous task to play by the rules. And so it's a high priority for them. The second thing that they mentioned is that they have spent a tremendous amount of effort thinking about how to maintain a 51% majority Palo Alto membership. So the way they do that is that they will only, any new members, non-resident members who want to join are put on the waiting list until they know that there's room for them. So they take their Palo Alto majority status very important. It's very important to them to be on good graces with the city, and the city gives them benefits because they are majority Palo Alto residents. And then they're very proud of the accomplishment that they had with the rapport with Adam Howard to do with getting new gates, new LED lights, and several other big changes to their facility in Mitchell Park. And they look forward to additional changes that they are paying for. And they love that relationship with the staff. So I think that speaks well for them and for Adam Howard and his team. So it's really fantastic. So those are the things I wanted to mention.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments? If not, yes, Darren.
Yeah, I don't know if now is appropriate, but I did look up the dates on that Tide Gate project. If you'd like, I can share that, or I can email it, whatever your preference is.
Sure, you can share it real quickly.
Sure. The levee trail surface improvement work, that's a portion of the Tide Gate. This is what allows them to do the improvement with big heavy equipment. Would start in November 2021 and be completed by the end of January 2022. And then the actual construction for the Tide Gate structure would start in September 2022 and be completed by the end of November 2026.
Thank you. And during that time period, there would be periods where there would not be construction in place, and they're working to keep the trail open, that the Adobe Creek Loop Trail open, so it won't be closed for that entire period.
Isn't 2 years that we're going to lose the trail at the end? Do you remember the number?
I don't remember offhand. We can follow
okay.
Up with the specifics. And we will be getting this as an agendized item to the commission soon as they request a PIO. Any other comments?
Yes, I have one final item, Jeff, and that is for all the basketball fans who are on the panel right now. Tara Vanderveer has just won the most games of any coach coaching women's basketball. I think it's 1,000 and something that just came through. So congratulations to Tara and Stanford for all their commitment to women's sports. And it would be nice if the city did a recognition of that in some way.
Maybe some sort of recognition could start from the Parks and Rec Commission.
Maybe it could with
Something
Councilmember Ku's help. Yeah.
Something we can talk about with staff.
Yep. Good.
I want to wish everyone a very happy holidays and Happy New Year. This is our last meeting of the year. It's been a unique year for all of us. Some would call it a difficult year. And I think we're all hoping for something better next year. There's lots of room to go up, and I'm optimistic that we're on our way. And I want to thank all of you for your contributions, both the staff that does such amazing work for us and the commission members that have all pulled together as a team to help support our staff and council and community, and for our council member, our liaison, who's been very diligent in supporting us and attending our meetings and offering guidance. Thank you to everyone.
Happy holidays, everybody, and thank you. Thank you for your services.
You.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Thank you. And we're out before 10 o'clock. Thank you.
Woohoo.
1 minute.
Motion to adjourn, Chair.
Yes, thank you. I will make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Keith. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Night.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Yeah.